Good morning, good morning, and good morning. Hey, guys, I'm Colin J. Millette. Y'all know who y'all listening to. Exit Strategies Radio Show. Yes, in beautiful North Charleston, or from beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. So, guys, look, today's episode, we're going to jump right in. Guys, you caught me on the go because your boy has been everywhere trying to spread a good message and a good word, if you will. But today, guys, we're going to kind of bring this thing back and we're going to talk about property management. Yes, some of you guys are wondering out there in the fields, if you will, trying to figure out, how you can get your property, rented. Maybe you're trying to figure out how you can find a rental in today's age. So I am very honored, and this gentleman and I, we go back a ways, but to introduce you guys to Eric Wetherington with New Heights Property Management. Eric, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Corwin, it's great to connect with you again, and good to see you. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
Well, you're quite welcome, quite welcome. So, Eric, if you could give our listeners like a high level overview of who you are, background, what got you here, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, Corwin. So I'm the broker in charge of New Heights Property Management. Our office is in Summerville, South Carolina. I've been in this property management space for over 14 years, and leading a company here in the greater Charleston area, local and a national level in the property management industry. Most recently, in 2019, I was the national president of the National Association of Residential Property Managers. So just really been involved in a lot of different levels in this space, in this industry. Enjoy working with the many people that we get to interact with. And certainly, Corwin, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about property management issues in Charleston and also here in the state of South Carolina as well. So I'm glad we can connect again and talk more about that today.
Awesome. So, Eric, we get a lot of questions. I mean, obviously, the market in general, not just in Charleston, but across the country, and you having served at national level, you are very familiar with all the hot button issues and all that stuff across the country. So, but let's start today from the consumer perspective. So, what do you think the number one challenge for a consumer in the current climate? What is the number one challenge they're facing in finding a place to rent or the process of renting a home?
Yeah, Corwin, I think the number one issue right now, of course, is availability, and finding a place, that's available that doesn't have five other people already lined up with applications, ready
Mhm.
to go. Affordability is right behind there in as the next most important thing because rent prices have just been going through the roof for the last several years. I mean, they're projecting to go up another 10% in 2022. And so it's getting harder and harder for the average person to be able to find a rental property that they can afford, that they can, move into without having to come up with, you know, several $1,000s of move-in fees and upfront expenses and all of that. So it's really tough out there right now for tenants.
So, as a tenant, what can a tenant do to win? May not be the right word, but I think that's the best word I got for it in the current climate. What can they do to win? In the current climate and find a place that's right and fits them.
You know, one thing that makes an application stand out is, move in, be ready to move in right away, be ready to
Okay.
start paying rent quickly. If you're not moving to like for our area in Charleston here, for example, if you're not moving here for 60 days and you're thinking you're going to look for a rental and somebody's going to hold a property for you for 30 or 45 days, that's probably just not going to happen. You know,
Mhm.
they're looking for someone who's going to be ready to start paying rent in the next 5 to 7 days typically. So
Mhm.
be ready to move in or at least be ready to start paying rent, pretty quickly if your application is approved. Have a strong financial backing, be able to demonstrate your income and
Mhm.
be able to most property management companies, at least in our area, require three times the amount of rent in verifiable income, and so be able to have that documented. And then just if you find a property and you see it and you like it, get your application in quickly because they're renting fast.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So let's flip this over because I'm probably gonna ask you a few questions here, and kind of go back and forth because, consumers oftentimes, I say this thing, Eric, that consumers lag behind. Whatever they're reading in the news is already underway. Most times it's almost over. So they usually never are on the cusp of the hot item or whatever it is. So, the market as far as sales as well as rentals, prices have skyrocketed. I don't know if you was at the residential market update or not. And we've talked about that, fairly extensively on the show, that rental rates and not this is across the country, but also definitely within our defined market in the Charleston area have also increased significantly. So let's talk about what this looks like for a homeowner. Maybe someone is an investor, or maybe they have a home they're going to relocate and they are looking to or need to, place it up for rent because they're planning on coming back. I see this often enough. What does that look like for that owner? What is that
But
process?
Well, I mean, certainly this is a great time to decide to be in the rental business if you've got a property already and you decide you want to rent it out. It's a little more difficult if you're trying to find something to buy and put it on as a rental because obviously the sale prices have increased so significantly. It's a little harder to get the cap rates and the ROI that investors want. But the big thing is, deciding that it's going to be a rental, first of all, understanding that a rental property is not a home. It's not your home anymore. If you were living in it, it's a business. Owning a rental property is being in business. And, there are some things you might, consider doing to that property before you put it on the rental market. Maybe it needs some fresh paint. Maybe, you need to change out the carpets for luxury vinyl tile or some other, long wearing, long life, hardwood surface flooring product. Don't get caught up about the flower beds and some of those things outside that you might have put a lot of work into if you lived in that property and you're going to turn it into a rental because tenants may not be as interested in those flowers as you are as a property owner. Then the other thing is a fence. 65% now of renters have a pet. That number increased pretty significantly over the last couple of years with the pandemic. And so a fenced yard for a single family rental property is a big deal. So if you've got a fence or if you need to fix up a fence or put in a fence, that's something that definitely you can see a return on if you can provide a fence. So that, and then of course, I'm always going to say, look for a professional property management company
Mm-hmm.
to help you along the way. We
Mm-hmm.
have seen this, consistently over the years where someone who's been managing their own rental property comes to us or comes to another professional property management company and says, I'm tired of dealing with the hassle of dealing with tenants and dealing with broken water pipes in the middle of the night and all of these things. And as a professional property manager, we can come in and take over that property and save them money on repairs. And in most cases, see rent increases over the next 12 to 18 months. And they're actually making more money. They're putting more money in their pocket at the end of the year by hiring a professional property manager than they were when they were managing it themselves. And so, the last thing I would say to any investor is, seek out professional property management.
So one of the things that you said in there that I imagine that you guys see a lot of is that people are under renting. They're managing their own properties, whatever number they started at, with whatever tenant, that tenant's there, 5 or 10 years later, the rent hasn't increased much, if at all, which means they're missing out on that opportunity. And sometimes, to be frank about it, Eric, I mean, you and I know this, there's a bigger thing at play, that may be their way of helping someone, but at
Right.
the same time, they may not be keeping the property up. And you guys, you also touched on that as well. So for someone, you said a broken water pipe, in the middle of the night, what are some of the pain points that you hear from investors or owners of property they just don't want to have to deal with anymore, when they're looking to turn it over to you as far as a property management company?
Well, Corwin, there's a couple of things, and I mean, one of them, and sadly, there's some folks that have a tendency to try to take advantage of other people, and so they'll tell a story this month about why they can't make their rent payment on time, and then next month
Mm-hmm.
they have another story, and the
Mm-hmm.
third month there's another story, and before you know it, 5, 6 months have gone by, and the owner hasn't collected rent. they think they're being kind, or they're trying to help somebody who needs help. But when you pull back the covers, the truth hasn't been in the stories that they're being told. And
Mhm.
people can just get, they can get frustrated by that, and they can end up losing a lot of money because
Mhm.
they think they're trying to help somebody, but they're really not. The other thing
Mhm.
is it's tough right now to find appliances. It's tough to find repair people. It's tough
Mhm.
to get things done. And professional property managers have, typically a pretty long list of trusted vendors that they can use to get materials, to get supplies, to get parts, to get people out there to make repairs. Because the number one reason why a tenant leaves a rental property is because they're dissatisfied with the maintenance experience. And so if the professional property manager, if the investor owner understands that their number one job while that tenant is in place is to provide them a great experience when they call and there's a problem at the property,
Mhm.
then that tenant will typically stay in that rental and pay their rent on time and pay it consistently.
Mhm.
And so, that's the focus of a professional property management company, is to, you know, really focus on those maintenance repairs, focus on that maintenance experience, get things fixed quickly so that the tenant will be happy and stay in their property. And we have professional property manager has a team to deal with those things, a team to take those calls at midnight, and when there's a problem going on, and they just have systems and processes, and they can just, plow right through those things. Whereas, a typical owner who maybe just owns one rental property, they get a call in the middle of the night, they might not even hear the phone ring, or
Yeah.
they get woken up in the middle of the night, and okay, what
Mhm.
do I do, and what do I
Yep.
need to do now, and they're stuck at midnight trying to figure out who to call and what next steps to take.
I tell this story sometimes. I had a situation one time managing or overseeing a property that a ceiling caved in the middle of the night. It was like maybe somewhere between 2 or 4 o'clock in the morning. What had happened is the ductwork had been sweating for a while, and the ductwork moisture built up, and then in turn it caused the ceiling to sag, which the tenant didn't report, and then it just fell through,
Right.
caved. Now, thank goodness nobody was there. No, it just fell, straight on whatever part of the living room, but it caved in completely. So, then you got to go back in and do all that work. But that was a call that the owner didn't have to take. The owner didn't have to take that call in the middle of the night in order to, get it all together, so to speak, and figure out what to do. Now, granted, that was a full day of back and forth, getting, people over and all that stuff, but case in point.
Right.
Now, we're off of COVID technically, and we're back, quote unquote, on the back end of the programs and all of this stuff. There's still money out here that's available to help tenants. So one, I want to kind of obviously, touch that, but I
Yes.
also want to get to from stopping the eviction action,
Mhm.
so the tenant not pay or otherwise, be in default. So what are you seeing with that?
Well, let me say this, and I think all of us that were involved in the property management business and real estate business in March of 2020, were pretty scared, didn't know what was going to happen, and we're really worried about our owners. We were certainly worried about our tenants and how we could take care of them best and help them through these difficult times. But, I'll say that there was a lot more work that went into 2020 of the normal property management functions. I know for our company and property managers all over the country, working with tenants, treating tenants like people, reaching out to them, talking, having those difficult conversations. Hey, okay, you can't pay your rent today. When can you pay? Or how much can you pay on Friday? And how much could you pay next week? And just working with people and helping them through those difficult times really paid off in the long run. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so by the end of the year, I mean, I know in our case, 98.7% of all rents have been collected,
Mm-hmm.
um, because we treated people like people and,
Yep.
and, and just worked with them. And so now that we're through the moratoriums, and, we're still trying to keep that focus in that. So when there's opportunities to work with people and help them, we try to do that. In
Mm-hmm.
the same token, we have an obligation to our client, to the owner of that property, to collect rent
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure that the property is being taken care of, and
Mm-hmm.
to go through the steps. It's never a fun day as a property manager when you have to evict somebody from their home.
Mm-hmm.
That should never be a happy moment for a property
Mm-hmm.
manager. But sometimes we have to take that step if there's just no other course of action that can be taken in order to collect the payments that are due to that property owner. Because
Mm-hmm.
the property owner is a real person too. And I think sometimes, sometimes we lost focus of that in some of the rules and laws that were put into place. The property owner is a real person too that has a mortgage payment and a tax bill due, and they have to pay their insurance agent every month, and they're relying on that rent payment to make those
Mm-hmm.
payments. And so with people, and we've got to treat people the way that they want to be treated, and we've got to take care of them as best we can, and yet work through the systems that are in play.
So that's definitely something real right there. People oftentimes forget that. It's impressive to me how sometimes people feel that, let's say that, I'm renting this place or whatever, and that, there's just this assumption that the owner of that home or property does not have a mortgage, that they're wealthy, they're well off and all those kind of things, and they don't need the money or what have you. And while we can understand that mindset and mentality, that is not the case. Like you said, the owner has bills too.
Corwin, we see a lot of headlines about all these billions of dollars that are pouring into single family rentals. And we hear companies like Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent, and
Mm-hmm.
how, Wall Street is getting into the rental business. The facts are this: institutional investors, we lump all those people into this term, institutional investors.
Mm-hmm.
They own less than 2% of all the single family residential real estate in our country. They
Wow.
own less than 2% of all the rental properties in our country that are single family, detached rentals. Not on the multifamily side, they own a lot more of that. But on the
Mm-hmm.
single family side, very small percentage. The vast majority of your single family rental properties are owned by the mom and pop investors. The people
Mm-hmm.
that own one home,
Mm-hmm.
they own maybe two or three rental properties. They
Mm-hmm.
bought those rental properties so that they could maybe put their kids through college, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe as an additional retirement savings vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all they own. So they're just normal people like most of the rest of us. And they're not sitting on, millions of dollars in cash that they can just say, oh, sure, live in my house for the next 6 months without paying rent. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work.
Exactly, exactly. And again, we missed that. You're right. You're right. That's a perfect example. That's good to know, the statistic on that as far as the number of people, if you will, who actually are just mom and pop. And some of those people move from house to house. So let's say they bought the first house,
Yep,
as a townhouse, a condo or something. That's where they started out, and then they saved up, bought another house and turned that one into a rental and kept
exactly.
doing that and accumulating, the properties as they went forward. I know military folks that, every time they get stationed somewhere, they buy another house and they have rentals all around the country because obviously their intention is when they retire, they'll either sell off everything and buy something, or they'll keep those properties as investment properties to help subsidize their income, through quote unquote retirement.
Corwin, another great point. And those military folks, we appreciate their service to our country and appreciate what they do. And they use these rental properties as long-term future investments for
Mm-hmm.
them. And we talk about this with our team on a regular basis because, of course, as you know, Charleston is a big military community, and you know, keeping our country safe. And we appreciate them. And it's just that's a great example of those are your owners of rental properties, people just like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Exactly, exactly. And again, it's impressive to me, but I mean, we understand it, but it's still to this day still impressive to me how closed-minded we are in that thought process and not understanding this particular
Yep,
thing. That oftentimes we attribute, we look at wealth, we assimilate wealth and greed to be the same thing when it's not. The creation and the building of wealth. Our show here is about real estate education and financial literacy. We talk about, legacy and all those things, and legacy is wealth. I mean, that's how,
right.
you grow, you build a foundation and you further build on that foundation generation by generation, quote unquote, as your legacy. So that is very, very, very important. So Eric, look, we've been going a while, man. Look, tell our listeners where they can reach you and get in contact with you at.
Sure, they can reach our local office, New Heights Property Management. Here, my email address is ericw@newheightspm. So ericw@newheightspm.com. That's a great way to reach out, or they can call our office 843-212-4629, who can help them with their real estate or property management needs. We don't sell real estate; we just do property management. Of course, Corwin sells real estate and does a great job of doing that. You want to make sure you
Well, we
go
appreciate
to
that.
him for those needs. But we just manage properties all over the Metro Charleston area. So reach out to us if we can be of help. Also, we have a website, newheightspm.com, newheightspm.com. Or when we have a lot of videos and information that we provide to owners on our website, they're just looking for information about how they would deal with their own rental properties.
Good. That is awesome. People don't understand it. And one thing that also, for our listeners, the rules vary by state. That's one thing that, so for, for example, in, states up north, how the eviction process, and Eric, I know you've heard this sentiment probably, here or there over your years, but I've had property owners, people that own property and, maybe clients or what have you, and they, have a tenant that may not pay on time or whatever, or may not pay, and they threaten to go put the stuff on the street. You can't just go put the stuff on the street. There's
Right.
a process, I remember I remember talking to a client, a particular client off the ledge several times, because he was like, well, look, I'm just going over there and change the law. It's like, no, you can't do that. So that eviction process in other states, in our state, but kind of tell our listeners, if you are under eviction, if you will, what does that look like, and what things that they may be able to do to get themselves back on track?
From a tenant's perspective or from owner's perspective, Colin?
Well, let's do tennis perspective first.
Okay. Well, from a tenant's perspective, again, I would say a good property manager is only going to file eviction if that's the last possible thing that they
Mm-hmm.
can do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to talk to you. They're going to reach out to you. They're going to try to get you to pay your rent on time and follow the terms of your lease. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what the lease is for. It's the document that dictates the relationship of, between the tenant and the landlord or the property manager. So eviction is never the first option. It's always the last option for a good property manager or a good
Mm-hmm.
landlord. But it is the law of the land. It is the step. If a tenant is just not willing to pay their rent and not willing to fulfill the terms of their obligations under the lease, then you're going to file an eviction. So
Mm-hmm.
the tenant would be notified of that filing. They would have an opportunity to respond. If they want a show cause hearing, they could request a show cause hearing and go before a magistrate and give their reason why they're not paying their rent or they're not fulfilling their obligations under the lease, and then let the magistrate make a decision about what that is. But typically speaking, 30 to 45 days is your timeline in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, working through that process. Sometimes, it's better for a tenant if they can to just move out, and
Yeah.
if an eviction has been filed so that it doesn't go on their record and they can get out if they can do that. But that's kind of the process
Okay.
for how we have it here in South Carolina.
Good. So, one of the things in that, and for our listeners, guys, Eric just said something there that's profound. If you're not going to be able to figure out how to get it done, get yourself back on track, and people have made efforts to work with you, then maybe that is what you need to do. But there's also help available. So in our state, federally, monies were made available to help people with rental assistance. If you're unable to pay your rent, you find yourself behind on utilities and you're trying to get all those things together, there is help out here. So Eric, I know a bunch of places where people can get help, but if you could give our listeners one place where they can turn to get help for, paying back rent and things of that nature if needed.
Yeah, and the program in our state specifically was kind of directed down to the county level. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
going to depend on which county you live in. So I would encourage you, if you are, need that help as a tenant, go to your county government website, go to berkeleycounty.gov or Charleston County or Dorchester County or whichever county you actually live in. Start
Mm-hmm.
there first, and then they will have a list of resources or direct places that you can go to in that county to get help for your rent. Some of our counties are still, offering rent help programs. Some are renewing, the funding for some of those programs still. So go to your county government site and look to find that out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Eric, Thank you so much. Look, we've had a great show today. We've got some very useful information out here to you. Eric, one more time, where can our listeners get in contact with you?
The best way to reach us is to look at our website, New Heights Property Management. NewHeightsPM.com is the website, NewHeightsPM.com. You can message us there. You can see our phone number and call us. A lot of great information there for us. And Corwin, it's been great to connect with you again and great to spend some time with you here today. Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Eric. So for our listeners, guys, please, if you need help, please make sure that you reach out to Eric and his team. Reach out to our show. We'll get you connected because there's plenty of resources available to help you to remain where you are. Now, granted, our business is to move people, but nonetheless, if you need help staying where you are, maybe you're facing foreclosure, maybe you're facing eviction, there are resources that are available to help you remain in place. And we can help you by getting you connected to the right service, to the right place. So guys, we've had an amazing show. As we always say, we love you. We love you. We love you. And we're going to see you guys out there in those streets.
Guys, that was a great show today, and we thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Exit Strategies Radio Show. My name is Corwin J. Millett. Yes, that is me. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in for today's episode. Exit Strategies is my baby. It is how I give back to our community. It is how I foster goodwill, spread good news, and trustfully help you get great results. Guys, as I always say to you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And we're going to see you guys out there in the streets.